Hey, everybody. Welcome. Good to have you here this evening. I'm excited to be here. And I want to thank everybody for coming in tonight, whether you're here tonight live or whether you are watching from one of the locations where this video is posted after it's complete. I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. And I'm glad you're here tonight. I am here. I've got my drink. I have got my mints and my Werther's hard candy for my throat. Still struggling with some throat issues. I'm beginning to wonder if that's going to be a lifelong condition. Anyway, I am Ron Williams. I'm a certified addiction recovery coach, and I want to welcome you here to Let's Talk Recovery. And we're going to be spending the next 60 minutes or so together. What we're going to be doing tonight is we're going to be having a conversation, not really a lecture, but a conversation. And I want to invite you, if you're here tonight, at any point in the conversation, if you have comments, if you have questions, feel free to stick those into the comments here on the live. And and if you don't mind, when you jump in, let me know where you're joining from. I'm always interested in knowing where everybody's at as they're watching. And so tonight, as you're watching, I want you to be thinking about this question for yourself. This is what we're going to be talking about. Anytime I meet with somebody for the first time as they're entering recovery, I always start by asking them a question. Here's the question that I ask. I ask simply, why are you wanting to do recovery? Why are you wanting to do recovery? Why are you here? And then I wait for an answer. And I make them answer before I move forward. I want to know why they're showing up. What's going on? What is your motivation? And that's my question for you tonight. What is your motivation for recovery? As I meet with clients, as I meet with people, I was in the coffee shop today. You guys know that I spend a lot of time in a coffee shop, all the time that I can. And I asked a couple people today, why are you doing this? Why are you on this journey? And I hear a lot of the same answers from people as they respond to that. A lot of the times when I ask that question, why are you doing this? I hear things like, well, I'm doing this because I got caught by my wife, or I'm doing this because I'm in trouble at work and I could lose my job. I'm doing this because I'm scared of the example that I am giving to my children. Although the one that I've already mentioned that seems to be the most common answer for most people is, I'm doing this for my wife, or I'm doing this for my spouse. I said wife because I work primarily with men. So I'm doing this for my wife. I don't want to lose my family. I'm afraid that my marriage is headed for divorce. And now here's what I want to say about that. Those answers are real answers, and they are real motivation. Those answers are valid answers. Those answers matter. And really, those answers are where most people entering recovery start. Occasionally, they say, because the judge or the prosecutor said, I have to be here. Occasionally, that's an answer. But it's answers like that where recovery starts for most of us. We're in some kind of trouble, and our motivation stems from potential consequences or potential loss of a relationship. But here's what I want to throw out there at you. That is a starting point for recovery, but if that initial primary motivation is where we stay, then we're going to run into problems and we're going to run into issues. And that's what I want to talk about, is finding a real motivation, a real reason to move forward in recovery, a motivation and a reason that's solid and that can be sustained as we move forward. Now, what I'm going to do, just as an example this evening, because a lot of times what I hear is I'm doing this for my wife. My wife's threatening to leave. She's threatening to take the kids. We'll use that as an example. It could be that your boss is threatening to fire you. It could be that there's a court situation involved. But I'm going to use a spouse. I'm doing this for my spouse as the example tonight. And that'll carry over to these other reasons that I've mentioned here tonight too. And so let's say, for instance, the reason that I'm entering recovery is for my spouse. My wife is tired of my drinking. She's tired of me getting high. She's tired of my sexual addiction, my unhealthy sexual behavior, whatever that compulsive behavior is. She's tired of it. Or my boss is tired of it. Or the judge is tired of it. But if the wife is the reason, here's my question for you. If something outside of yourself is the reason, the primary reason for your recovery, then what happens when you have a fight? What happens when you feel ignored or you feel neglected? What happens when you have an argument? When you feel rejected? When you feel unseen? When that happens, then that motivation that's been strong enough to move us into recovery, when that person, that job, that situation, when there's a problem there, I lose the job, the wife leaves, we have an argument, we have a fight. Now that very person that you were doing this for feels like the problem. Do you hear what I'm saying? I'm doing this for my wife. I'm doing this to save my marriage. And then the two of you have an argument. All of a sudden, your motivation is out the window. And your odds of a relapse have just skyrocketed because your primary motivation was outside of yourself. You were doing it for somebody or for something else. When that happens, our motivation doesn't just weaken. Many times our motivation can disappear. Do you hear what I'm saying? Have you experienced that? I talk to people all the time. Their recovery has been strong, it's been active, it's been real, and then all of a sudden they feel neglected. All of a sudden the wife isn't happy. and they begin to question their motivation for continuing on, for pushing forward. Now, external motivation outside of yourself, can work, but it only works in specific situations. And external motivation works when pressure is high. It works when consequences are close. Let's say that your motivation is your job. You've been caught drinking on the job. They're threatening to fire you, threatening to let you go. But you've been doing well for a little while. They've backed off. They're not pressuring you. They're not on you anymore. And all of a sudden, that motivation dwindles and drops. And our potential for relapse escalates. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Do you understand what I'm saying? Can you relate to that? Our recovery gets tested when we're tired. Our recovery gets tested when we're lonely. Our recovery gets tested when we're frustrated. And when we're doing it for somebody else. Recovery, bottom line, isn't tested when things are good. Recovery is tested when things get hard. And if your reason for recovery is outside of you, your recovery is going to rise and it's going to fall with things that you don't control. It's going to rise and fall on external conditions. So, here's the shift. This is what I want you to think about. If you're in recovery for your wife, for instance, and your motivation, your primary motivation is, I don't want to lose her. I don't want to go through divorce. What if that primary motivation, that reason for recovery, shifts and changes? What if it becomes something like, I don't want to live like this anymore? Now, do you notice the difference in that? All of a sudden, my reason for recovery isn't dependent on somebody else. It isn't dependent on circumstances outside of myself. Recovery now is based on something that's important and internal with me. I use a written relapse prevention plan with clients. I've offered that to you guys in the past, if you're interested, and I'll offer that to you tonight. If you don't use a written relapse prevention plan and you're interested in taking a look at one, shoot me an email. Shoot me a message here on Facebook, and I'll be glad to send one to you. I just need your email address. And I'll be glad to send you a copy of a written relapse prevention plan. But the first item on that written plan that I use with clients is what I call a selfish reason for recovery. That's not selfish in a bad way. I don't want you to think about selfishness in a bad way. That idea of a selfish reason for recovery is something that's based on me and on my desires, on what I want and what I want to change. It's not based on the kids, not based on the wife, not based on the job. So what happens with them doesn't affect my motivation. I'll give you an example of how this works. I still use a written relapse plan. I've been in recovery for a very long time. And I am on a long streak of sobriety. But I still use a written plan. And I have a selfish reason for recovery written on my plane. Some of you, maybe most of you, are familiar with my story. I was in ministry for over 20 years, and for a lot of that time, while I was in active ministry, I was also in active addiction. I just did a really good job of hiding that from everybody around me. And one of the things that used to hit me hard, I'd be standing in the pulpit on Sunday morning, delivering a sermon, and right in mid-sentence, the thought would hit me. What if the people here knew what you were doing last night? What if the people here were aware of your addiction? And I could almost freeze up. And so my selfish reason for recovery, my motivation for recovery, is I remember how that fear of exposure used to hit me, used to shut me down emotionally. And my selfish reason for recovery is I don't ever want to experience that fear of exposure again. I don't ever want to have anything in my life again where I live in fear of being exposed. So do you see how that works? My reason for recovery isn't based on something external to myself. It's based on my desires, what I want to experience and live for. That's what I'm talking about. I don't want to live like that anymore. I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of the cycle. I'm tired of the internal conflict. This is where ownership in recovery begins. And we have to take ownership, personal ownership of our recovery if we want to experience recovery long term. I've known a number of people over the years that enter into recovery because of court, that enter into recovery because of family pressure, that enter into recovery because of a fear of divorce or losing a job. Ownership begins when our reason for recovery shifts to my desire for change. So, healthy selfishness. Sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it? And for a lot of people it is, but in recovery, I think healthy selfishness is a real thing. I think it's something that's important for us. Healthy selfishness looks like prioritizing recovery time. You know, I attend an in-person meeting every Monday night. That's my home meeting. Now, as I'm able to, I often do other meetings during the week, sometimes online meetings. But that Monday night meeting is my home meeting, and it's a priority for me. It's marked on my calendar, and it takes a major life and death situation for me not to be present at that meeting. Prioritizing recovery time, prioritizing daily meditation, daily practices. Healthy selfishness can look like setting boundaries. I'm not going to spend time in environments where I'm shamed and where I'm constantly judged. Those things are going to push me towards relapse. And so I set healthy boundaries. I'm not going to go there. There was a long period of time in my recovery at the beginning where there were specific places where I set boundaries. I will not go to this place. I will not participate in this activity. There were specific people that if I was around them, even if I liked them, even if I enjoyed being around them, their presence could trigger me in multiple ways. And so there were times when I set boundaries. I just can't be around that person. This is not a safe place for me. A healthy selfishness can look like learning to say no. We don't have to say yes to everything. Now, I know that boundaries and things of this nature, from the outside, it can look to other people like everything is about recovery, like my life revolves around recovery. And to be honest, early on in my recovery, there was a time when most everything did revolve around that. But as we grow, we become able to expand and to step into other areas. But what we're doing in that initial time, and as we prioritize recovery time, as we set healthy boundaries, as we learn to say no, what we're really doing in that situation is we're learning to build a life that can sustain healthy connection. Healthy connection. And that's what recovery is all about. Healthy connection. You remember our saying? The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is healthy connection. And we have to learn to live in that place of healthy connection. So, in recovery, there's a paradox. When we stop doing recovery for the wife, when we stop doing recovery for the job, for the family, for the kids, for whatever external reason that started us down that path, when we stop doing recovery for our wife, we actually become better for our wife. We come to a healthier place, got an itch. We come to a healthier place, to a better place for our relationship, for our marriage, for our wife. As we begin to focus on recovery as a matter of healthy change for me, we begin to arrive at a place of stability. If my reason for recovery is I don't want to live like that anymore, I don't want to live where I'm constantly lying, where I'm constantly trying to deceive the people that are around me, where I'm constantly trying to hide my behaviors and my fears and my struggles from the people that are around me, from the people that care about me. When I arrive at that place, I begin to experience a sense of stability in my recovery and in my life. It actually becomes, when I'm doing recovery for my wife, when we have an argument, when we have a disagreement, when I feel neglected in the relationship, if she is the key to my motivation, then when our relationship struggles, my recovery struggles, and my recovery potentially fails. But when my primary motivation for recovery changes to, I want to do this for myself. I want to be in a healthy place. I want to do this because I don't want to live like that anymore. And yes, there are still going to be times when the wife and I have disagreements, when we have arguments. There are going to be times when we're not on the same page and when we're maybe not necessarily getting along. But I'm not doing my recovery for her. And so in those times when our relationship is struggling, my recovery stays strong because I'm doing this for me. I achieve stability. I achieve presence. When I'm doing this for something external to myself, when I'm doing it for the job, when I'm doing it for the kids, when I'm doing it for the wife, when there is a disconnect in that relationship, then I try to attempt to hide and to isolate. And I begin to shut down. But when I'm doing this for myself, because I'm choosing not to live like this any longer, then I'm able to maintain presence with the people around me, even when we're not exactly on the same page. And when I'm doing these things for myself, I'm able to maintain consistency. And this is where trust starts to rebuild. Not from pressure, not from fear of disappointing these other people, but trust starts to rebuild because of who I'm becoming. Because my employer sees that, yes, things are tough, but he's still pushing in. And he's still working to stay connected and to stay in that healthy place. The same with my wife, the same with my kids. That motivation is based on who I want to be. Is what I'm saying making sense here? Is what I'm saying connecting with something that you've experienced? Have you ever based your recovery on something external to yourself? And have you struggled in those situations? What are your thoughts there? I'm interested in knowing. If you're here, you can stick those thoughts in the comments. If you're watching this after it's been posted, you're watching it on video, then feel free to place comments there or to send me a comment on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram. I want to hear about your experience. I want to hear about what you're thinking, what's going on with you. Now, I have a couple questions for you, and I want you to be honest. Don't have to answer them here if you don't want to, but I want you to think about these. I want you to process them in your head. I want you to be honest with yourself. When you first began to consider recovery, what was your motivation? What was your reason for recovery? What was it? And over time, has your reason for recovery changed? And here's what I want you to understand. Here's what I want you to know. There's nothing wrong with your reason for recovery changing. My reason for recovery has changed multiple times over the years. Multiple times. It has changed. It's become more focused. It's become clearer for me. It's become clearer. It's become more defined. That reason, that selfish reason for recovery that I gave you earlier, I don't ever want to experience that fear of exposure again. I've had multiple reasons for recovery over the years. I've been in recovery a long time, 16 years maybe now. And my reason for recovery has changed over the years. It's actually become stronger. My reason for recovery has become more stable. It's become much healthier. And my sobriety has become a long-term thing. And so that shift has to happen. When that reason for recovery moves away from an external person or an external situation, all of a sudden now, when it changes to something like, I don't want to keep living like this. I don't want to live in that fear. I don't want to live in that state of desperation, of brokenness. Then all of a sudden, when I have a disagreement with my wife, when my children distance themselves from me, my reason for recovery doesn't disappear, because my reason for recovery is no longer based on somebody else. My reason for recovery no longer fades when I get overlooked or when I feel neglected by somebody that I care about. When I get passed over for that promotion at work. My reason for recovery doesn't fade. My reason for recovery no longer depends on how somebody else is showing up for me. It depends on how I'm showing up for myself. And that is a key to long-term recovery. That's a key to long-term change and to long-term health. And that kind of motivation holds up under pressure. It's based on what I want and what I desire for myself. Once motivation becomes internal, priorities start to follow. The priorities start to reorient themselves. I begin to choose things not because somebody's watching me, but because I have decided who I want to be. And when that happens, I start to show up, even when it's inconvenient. When that motivation for recovery becomes internalized, I begin to reach out before things get bad instead of waiting until after I'm struggling and after I've relapsed. I make that phone call when I first notice that I'm dysregulated. When that motivation becomes internal, I keep my routines even if nobody would know if I skipped them. Even if nobody knows, I keep them because they are important to me. Now, that doesn't mean that I keep them perfectly, but I keep them and I press in on my plan. Because suddenly, when recovery is internalized, the question is no longer, is it worth it for her? Is it worth it for the boss? Is it worth it to maintain my reputation? The question becomes, is this the person that I want to be? What are your thoughts on that? How does that hit you? How does that speak to where you're at in your recovery today? How does that fit for you? You know, I had somebody just this week tell me, they called me up and they said, I've been busting my ass. I've been going to meetings. I've been doing the work to save my marriage. And they told me, I got hit with divorce papers this week. They went on to tell me, I'm thinking real hard about going to get a drink. Now, here's a question for you. If you're doing this for your relationship, if your relationship never gets better, if your relationship doesn't change at all, if it turns out that your marriage can't be saved, if it turns out you're still going to lose your job, if that's reality for you, will you still choose recovery? Is your motivation for recovery, I'm doing this because I don't want to live like that anymore. That's not who I want to be. That's that place that we have to arrive at sooner or later. That place where we're doing this not for them, we're doing this for me. Are you in that place yet? Is that where you're at? That has to become the place that you're living from if you expect recovery to continue long term. And I'm going to tell you, man, I'm praying that your marriage succeeds. I'm praying that if you want to keep that job, that you keep that job. I'm praying that if you're wanting to hold on to that connection with your kids, that you're able to do that. You know, I've shared before, I have 4 daughters. I'm close with 3 of my daughters. One of my daughters has basically nothing to do with me. I do see her on occasion. I saw her just recently. And when I saw her, we spoke. She was kind. She spoke. I got to tell you, it lifted my heart. It made me feel good. It also made me miss the old days when we had a strong relationship. Because where we're at right now in our relationship is that when I was in my active addiction, I caused a tremendous amount of harm to my daughters and to my family. And this particular daughter has said she doesn't want me to call. She doesn't want me to initiate contact. And I don't. Does that hurt? Absolutely. Is that what I want? Am I happy with that relationship? Absolutely not. But is whether that relationship is strong or not, is that going to dictate and control my recovery? No, it's not. It's not. My recovery is for me. But even built into that, I can say for sure that if I didn't maintain my recovery, then there's zero hope of any kind of reconciliation moving forward. And it may not take place, even if my recovery stays solid the rest of my life. Restoration with that daughter may not happen. I pray every day that it does. But my recovery doesn't depend on that relationship. I am going to be a better person for me. For me. And I have to be honest with myself when I ask those questions. Am I doing this for me, or am I doing this for somebody else? Am I doing this for an external reason? And I have to be able to answer that question honestly. Honestly. If I want to move forward with integrity, with strength, with commitment. And that's the question that I'm challenging you to ask. Why are you doing this? Why are you choosing to take this step into recovery? Are you doing it for yourself? Or are you doing it for an external reason? Make sure you understand that and that you're honest with yourself as you move forward. Because here is a statement of fact. If your reason for recovery can be taken away from you, if your reason for recovery can be taken away, sooner or later it will be. Sooner or later it will be. But when your reason for recovery becomes your own, then your priorities finally have something solid to stand on. And so I want to challenge you first to be honest with yourself, to answer that question. Why am I doing this? What's the reason for my recovery? And then I want to challenge you to consider if that reason is external. Turn your sights inward. Why do you want to do this? Why would you want to do this for yourself? You can do this for yourself. You don't have to stay on that same path. You can change. You can do it. I want to thank you for being here with me tonight. I know I'm wrapping things up a little bit early, but I'm going to invite you to sit in that question that I've posed to you this evening. What's your motivation for recovery? Why are you doing this? Does your reason for recovery need to change? Can your reason be shaken? If it's external to yourself, it can be and it will be. If you'd like to talk, if anything I've said this evening has stirred something in you, if you have questions about your motivation, if you have questions about why you're seeking change and you want to talk about that, reach out. Shoot me an email. Go to my website, rw-coaching.com. There's a link here. Let's talk. I'd be happy to meet with you. If you're interested in that relapse prevention plan that I've mentioned, I'd be happy to email that to you. All you have to do is shoot me a message and ask for it. Leave your email, and I'll get that out to you. I think a written plan is an important part of our work in recovery. And the first step on that written plan that I'll send you is a challenge for you to come up with a selfish reason for recovery. All right. I want you to have a good evening. And I want you to spend some time thinking about my question. And I'll see you next week here on Let's Talk Recovery. Have a good night.